All right, good afternoon. I'm Millie Blackwell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Showcase Workshop, and I'm here this afternoon to introduce our next session with Liz Willits on email automation. So Liz is a keynote speaker, an online marketing expert, and founder of Liz Willits, a copywriting, email marketing, and demand generation agency. She has sent literally millions of emails in her career, so she knows what it takes to create a message that will convince subscribers to open, click, and convert. So most of us have probably been on the receiving end, or I will admit, tragically, the distribution end of email automation that is impersonal, robotic, and ineffective. But Liz is here to show us it doesn't have to be this way. So she's going to teach us how automation can build relationships, grow our brands, and save us time. And she told me before this that she's offering a money-back guarantee that we'll leave this session knowing how to get 80% open rates and 30% click-through rates. So no pressure, Liz. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Millie. And thanks everyone who's here today attending. It's great to have you. And I'm just going to jump right in. So a little bit about myself. I am an extremely private person. I don't like to share anything about myself. I like to keep it all, close to the vest and not publicly share any information about myself. And I think a lot of people do this in professional settings. We're very private. We don't get personal. And this can kind of be a problem when it comes to marketing because a lot of marketing is then impersonal. So I recently decided to take on the challenge of being much more personal with my own marketing in the hopes that this can help people, that this can have an impact on people because personality in marketing is so important. And so one of the things that I did recently was a big, big risk for me. And it was sharing one of the most personal stories of my life about one of the hardest days of my life. And I shared this story rather unwantingly. I almost deleted it before posting it, but I shared it in the hopes that it could help other people, as often our personal stories do. And it was the story about how I had found out when I was working at my prior job, I had found out at work that my mom had a brain tumor. And my mom is like my best friend. So this was absolutely devastating news for me. And the post went on to talk about how my boss responded. And he just told me, leave work, don't come back, don't worry about it here. We got everything. Don't even worry about it. Just let me know if you need us. And that response, meant so much to me and was such a good example of great workplace culture and made such a big difference in my life. And by sharing this story, I hoped that it would be a good example of other people of a great workplace culture. But like I said, I posted it really nervously because I don't like to share personal information about myself. I certainly don't like to share this story because it's a story that's very, very difficult for me. But I ended up sharing it. I ended up not deleting it. And within one day, it had gotten 15,000 reactions and nearly 500 comments. And it went on to get about 15 million views, over 300,000 reactions and thousands of comments. And the engagement is an interesting thing because it shows that, how personal and real stories have such an impact. But really, the comments section of this post is what was so amazing to me. People started posting and sharing their own stories of their own family members who were gravely ill and how they found out through work and how their workplace handled it well or handled it really poorly, and how that had such a profound impact on their life. And hundreds of people messaged me thanking me for posting this story because it was an encouragement to them. And my mom, still my best friend, she recovered from this and is doing really well right now. So I have that happy story to share. But I share all this to say that our marketing is often robotic because we're afraid to share personal stories. And that's not to say that you need to share a personal story like this, but we don't share any stories at all in our marketing. We don't have any humanity at all in our marketing. And like I mentioned, you don't need to share a personal story like I did, but sharing some kind of personality and humanity can have such a big impact on your audience, because they will feel such empathy with you and such a connection with you. And you can actually truly help people by opening up in your marketing. But our email automation is especially robotic. It's terrible. And if you've ever seen a really good email, it's probably a rare occurrence, because a lot of emails are just not very good, and automation is often robotic. In fact, only 32% of companies consider their marketing automation very successful at achieving their important goals. And but this is not because email marketing is not effective, because email marketing for the brands that are doing it right is really effective. Email marketing produces $44 for every $1 spent, according to Campaign Monitor. According to Sales Cycle, 73% of marketers rated the ROI of email to be good or excellent. Disruptive Advertising found that shoppers spend 138% more when marketed to through email as compared to those who do not receive email offers. Campaign Monitor reported that 320% more revenue is driven from automated emails than non-automated emails. So email marketing works really well, but most people aren't doing it well at all. And a big issue that is happening in the email world is just a lack of personality, a lack of humanity. And it is humanity that people connect with in our marketing. And during this presentation, I want to talk to you about the sales email I sent with a 27% click-through rate and an 86% open rate, because this kind of engagement is possible when you're human and when you're real, and when you connect with your audience in a human and emotional and a personal in a real way. Because again, our audiences are striving, or they're looking for that connection, and we're just not doing it in our marketing. And, I shared the story about my mom at the very beginning of this. I will reiterate again, you don't need to share a personal story like that to get personal in your marketing. And I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to share my process for benchmark busting email open rates, click-through rates, and sales. Really quick, a bit about me. I started my own agency this year, and I work with SaaS companies and creators, and I help them with their marketing and their copy, lead generation, and email marketing. And I am an email marketing nerd. I do actually love this stuff, and I think it's cool. And when I tell people that I'm an email marketing nerd, this is they give me a strange reaction, which I'll show you in just a second. But I've sent millions of emails, as Millie mentioned, and I worked at one of the world's largest email marketing platforms for many years. So got an inside look at the email marketing industry. But when I tell people that I love email marketing, this is kind of the reaction I get. I'll kill you. Kind of like the way that Michael Scott in The Office looks at Toby. He hates Toby. He despises him. And at one point he says, I'll kill you. Because a lot of people hate email marketing. It's scammy. It's spammy. It can be really awful and robotic. And that is why a lot of people hate email marketing. They hate email marketers. So I'm going to show you how to send emails that aren't like this, that actually make a connection with your audience and don't make people feel like they want to, just delete all your emails and send them to the spam folder. So let's talk about the 5 top automation mistakes that people make. Mistake number 1, no data. So sometimes email marketers go into things and they have no understanding of who their audience is, their audience pain points, what their audience needs, and how they can even help their audience. They have no data about their audience. And this is one of the biggest reasons that people send really impersonal, really robotic email campaigns. Because without data, you're not going to be able to segment or personalize your emails. You're not going to be able to understand your subscribers. You're not going to be able to write effectively. And you're certainly not going to get high open rates, click-through rates, or sales. Data is all important. Data is, in fact, everything. And you should definitely be gathering data before you even begin mapping an automation series. So you might have seen an automation map like this before, where it'll map out the automated campaign for you and exactly where and when subscribers get emails. But before you do anything like this, you should have a lot of data and a lot of understanding on who your subscribers are and what they need. How? Well, number 1, surveys. Surveys can be really important. So you can email a survey to your subscribers. You can do customer interviews and subscriber interviews. I actually do a lot of these quite frequently with email subscribers and with customers. And you'd be surprised how often they want to hop on a Zoom call with you. They want to hop on a Google Meet with you. And they want to talk through their pain points, what they need, and how your product can help them. Just this week, I was talking to, I work with a certain food brand right now who their product is a low sugar baking mixes. And I was talking with one of their clients this week who can't have sugar at all for health reasons. And the product makes such a huge impact on her life because now she has a sweet tooth, and now she can have, sweeter tasting products thanks to these low sugar baking mixes. And understanding subscriber pain points and what your subscribers are really going through and what your audience is really going through is integral to having human copy that actually talks about their needs and their pain points. Because you may think of marketing as just a sales thing, and it should never be connected to emotion, or it shouldn't be talking about people's pain points, but it really should, because what marketing does is it helps put products in front of people that, solve their problems. That's what it does in the right sense when you're selling good products that actually change people's lives and actually help them. And to understand how your product helps people, you need to have interviews with your subscribers, with your customers. Market research, again, you can do things like review mining, where you can do things like review mining, where you go onto Amazon, you look at product reviews for competitors and see how those people are talking about competitive products to yours. And you can do things like also just emailing your audience and asking them for their perspective on your product and on your emails. And qualitative data is a must. You can't just have quantitative data. Qualitative data is going to help you understand a slew of things that are very important to your marketing. So qualitative data helps you understand how your audience thinks, their dream state, pain points, and goals, and also how they phrase things. So qualitative data is really an integral for understanding how your audience phrase things. So how do they talk about your product? How do they talk about their pain points? How are they talking about the emotional things in their life that are driving them to purchase your product? So mistake number one is not having data. I encourage you to go get data before you write any email campaign. Go talk to your customers, understand how your product, your service is solving problems in their lives, because marketing, and anytime someone buys something, there's always an emotional core to that purchase decision. And there's always a reason on the emotional level that they're interested in purchasing a product. And you need to understand that so you can better help your customers and so you can write better emails. So mistake number two, no welcome email. The welcome email is the first email you send to subscribers immediately after they join your email list. And welcome emails are important because, one, they set the impression for your subscribers, and two, they get a ton of engagement. In fact, they get 4 times higher open rates and 5 times higher click-through rates than other emails. So they're really a high engagement email. If you're not sending this automated email, you're missing out on that high engagement. You're missing out on setting that first impression. So let's talk about quickly the anatomy of a welcome email. What do you put inside of it? Well, number one, you want to deliver your incentive or your lead magnet if you promise one on your sign-up form. So if you promise a freebie in exchange for subscribing, you should deliver that in your welcome email. Additionally, you probably want to ask subscribers to whitelist you, and whitelisting is when subscribers add you to their email address book. This is good for email deliverability. Your emails are more likely to reach your subscribers' inbox if they have your email address in their address book. Another way you can get subscribers to whitelist you is simply by replying to one of your emails. By the act of replying to an email, you are automatically added to their address book. So you can even ask them questions in your email, and hopefully they'll respond, and then you will be whitelisted. Set expectations for how frequently you will send emails, what kind of email content you'll send, and when subscribers can expect to receive emails. One of the biggest reasons that spam complaints happen is because subscribers receive unexpected emails, and so they mark them as spam. So if you can set expectations for the kind of emails you're going to send in your welcome email, you're going to have lower spam complaints. And you can briefly introduce your business here. This is not the time to sell. It's way too early in your relationship with a subscriber. Also, build excitement. Build excitement with your subscribers because they've just joined your email list. It should be a valuable experience for them. They should be receiving great email content from you. You can also start segmenting, which I'll explain later on, and also give value in this email. This is a great opportunity to start giving free value to your audience so that, again, you can build that relationship with them. So for instance, this is one of my clients, Plant-Based Juniors, and they offer education on how to cook and bake plant-based foods for your entire family, including your kids. So this is a part of their welcome email. And it's a good example because it's also showing how they are bringing their personality into the email automation and that they are connecting with their audience and know and understand their audience's pain points. So they say here, we're also raising our own babes on plant-based diets. We understand the frustrations, the fears, and the challenges that come with it. We also know how rewarding and healthy and possible it is to feed your babe a complete and nutritious plant-based diet. And one of the big struggles we found through market research that this audience has is picky eaters. So they had a lot of kids who were picky eaters, and this was really frustrating and a really emotional problem for moms and for dads and for parents who are dealing with this issue. So this is something, when you understand the fears and the pain points of your audience, you want to make sure you're bringing it out in your email copy and helping your audience overcome those pain points. And a quick side note, because I just showed you the first email example throughout this presentation, and I will be sharing a lot of examples. But a first side note is, let's talk about email design real quick. Some simple design concepts you should know. And first off, simple design often beats complex. So a lot of non-designers, they'll go to design an email and they're like, well, this doesn't look good. Let me add this, let me add that, let me add this. And all of a sudden their email looks really overwhelming and it's not easy to read. So simple often beats complexity, especially if you're not a designer by trade. So number one, use padding in your emails. Make sure there's white space. It makes it easier for people to read your emails. Use a consistent, unique call to action button color. You want to draw your reader's eyes to the call to action button. Use images to support your message. Don't just put images in for the heck of it, images that don't make sense. When you include images, they should help to support and to reinforce and to add to your message. So for instance, I work with a lot of companies in the food industry, and in the food industry, images of food are really important because food is so highly visual. Whereas if you work in the marketing industry, pictures of marketing aren't exactly, the most interesting thing in the world, so you may not need them. Use alt text or alternative text behind images. This helps with accessibility, first off. So if you have people who are using in your audience who are using screen readers because they may be blind, alt text, they won't see images. So alt text is the text that is behind an image. So that when the image doesn't appear, that they have some context of what was in the place of the image. It's also important if your subscriber has image loading turned off, because then an image won't appear for them. So alt text, again, gives them context on what was there in the place of the image. And then finally, don't overdo it with color. Use 1 or 2 brand colors. Keep it simple. Don't overdo it. You don't want your email to become garish. So mistake number 3, no segmentation or personalization. And this is a big one. If you want to send human, personal emails that actually connect with your audience, then you need to segment, because your email audience, they're not all the same. People in your email audience are different. They have different interests, they have different pain points, and they have different needs. So you want to make sure that you are segmenting. And one of the best ways to segment your email list is to use behavioral email automation. Behavioral email automation is automated email sent to subscribers based on their own choices and actions. And by its very nature, it's segmented, personal, and relevant. And one of the beauties of behavioral email automation is that your subscribers are segmenting themselves via their actions. So there's way less that you need to do because they're doing it for you. So it's really powerful, and it's also simpler because you set it up once and then they start segmenting themselves. So for example, one way to use behavioral automation is to actually segment off of your sign-up form or your landing page, so that the moment someone opts into your email list, you can begin segmenting them. Here's an example of one of my sign-up forms where I just ask people, what would you like to learn about? Copywriting, email marketing, or lead generation. And then when they choose one of those options, I tag them in my email marketing platform. And again, it allows me to send better content to my audience. If my audience is struggling with copywriting, I can send them helpful content about copywriting because maybe they're not interested in email marketing. In fact, maybe they hate email marketers. So it might be better for them to learn about copywriting. Another example of this for the food industry is you can actually send an email to people. So you don't need to segment off your sign-up form. You can also segment with an email. So you could send an email to people saying, do you have any dietary restrictions? And give people the option of clicking a link, a vegan link, a vegetarian link, or a paleo link. And once they click that link, they get tagged with the option that they chose. So if they click vegetarian, they're tagged as vegetarian. And then you can send them an entire automated email series about sending them your best vegetarian recipes, for instance. And this is a really good example of why segmentation is important, because a vegetarian and a vegan individual have very different dietary needs, and they're very different interests than someone who's on a paleo diet or even a keto diet. And in fact, if you send them all the same content, there are going to be certain emails that are just not relevant to them at all. And that's where the importance of segmentation comes in. This happens in other audiences too, not just in this example. But you can segment via your sign-up form. You can also segment via having a survey within an email that asks people about their interests or their needs. So here's another really great example of segmentation in action. This is like one of the most mind-blowing examples of segmentation in action that I have seen. This is from a company called Truity, and they do personality tests. So they offer paid personality tests on their site. But in this automated email that they send, they have this beautiful, very complex, sophisticated automated series. This is one of their welcome emails, and they ask people to identify what personality type they are. So if you're INFJ or INFP, and when you click on one of these options, you get tagged in the email marketing platform, and then you're automatically added to an automated email series that matches your personality type. And when I talk about personal and human marketing, it doesn't get much more personal and human than emails that match your personality type and are geared towards who you are as a person. So really smart example of segmentation. Another example of how you can segment within your email content. You don't have to do it via your sign-up form. You can actually do it via these one-question surveys in your email content. And here's another example from my client, Plant-Based Juniors. And in this email, this is a part of their welcome email, we asked subscribers to identify what they're interested in learning about: plant-based pregnancy, plant-based baby-led weaning, or plant-based recipes for their family. Because we had found through research, there were three topics that this audience was really interested in, and they were very different. And so we wanted to identify what they're most interested in and then deliver the resources to them to help them in those situations. So we found that people who wanted to learn about plant-based pregnancy had very specific pain points and very specific problems. And the Plant-Based Juniors founders have content to help this audience. They just need to know who to send that content to. And this click segmentation email really helped with that. Another way that you can segment with your audience is via website page or landing page segmentation. So you can actually, depending on the email marketing platform you use, segment your email subscribers when they visit a certain website page. So for instance, perhaps they visit let's say you have an online course and they visit your course page, you can actually tag them that they visited your course page. And then if they don't purchase within a day or so, you can send them an email being like, hey, you didn't buy the course yet. Here's a couple reasons why you might want to buy it, and promote the course to them then. And another example of this would be like a cart abandonment email. So yeah, another great example. And mistake number 4, no emails for subscribers who are ready to buy. And so this is what I just talked about. But you can use things like page visit automation to help with this. So one of the ways that a subscriber will identify that they're ready to buy is by visiting bottom of funnel pages on your site, like a course page, like adding items to their cart, and then not ending up purchasing. If you're e-commerce, if you're in the SaaS industry, software as a service industry, people visiting your feature or your pricing page, and then they don't end up purchasing. So you want to make sure to have automated emails for these subscribers who are showing they are almost ready to purchase. They might just need that last little push. So for example, here's an email from Freshly. They are a meal plan delivery service. And this is their cart abandonment email. So when someone adds recipes to their cart and doesn't end up purchasing, they get this email a little bit later. And the email says, your meals are one click away. What you left in your cart would look really good in your fridge. Complete your order. So having these kind of emails for your subscribers that are showing that they're ready to buy or they're ready to take another action is a really important way to engage with your audience. Okay, so mistake number 5, and this ties back to the beginning of my presentation and to most of this presentation. And this is a big problem throughout marketing, but it's having no humanity and no story within our emails. They're just emails that say something like buy now. And when we're marketing products and services that can change people's lives and really make their lives better, not having humanity in our marketing is a huge mistake. So now this is the point where I want to talk about the sales email that I sent with a 27% click-through rate and 86% open rate. For those of you who don't know the email marketing world very well, the average click-through rate is 1%, a little bit lower than 1% actually. And the average open rate, depending on who you talk to, is in between 17 and 20%. So this email was one that performed outrageously well. And it's also unusual for an email that is selling a product to perform this well. So the email performed really well. And I want to share some of the things that worked so well with this email. And this was the subject line. It's uncomfortable to admit this. And just going back, that this email had an 86% open rate, meaning only 14% of people did not open this email. And this subject line is a strong hook of a subject line. Now, there's things you have to be careful of using a subject line like this. You don't want to be clickbaity. And clickbait content is when you have a hook, you have a strong hook that hooks your reader, that gets their attention, and then the content itself doesn't actually deliver on that hook. So meaning that you kind of just tricked your audience. And it's really important that if you're going to have like a hook like this that starts to tell a story, that your content actually delivers. So that is one qualifying statement. Make sure you're not being clickbaity. The subject line of this email was, it's uncomfortable to admit this. And then the email goes on to say, in fact, we weren't sure we even should. And the two founders who wrote this, who were sending this email, were talking about their own fears when they were pregnant about raising their kids via a plant-based pregnancy. And they felt plant-based pregnancies would be healthier, but they didn't want to hurt their kids. And this was a real fear that they had. And so they actually went out and looked for books and resources on plant-based pregnancy, and they couldn't find any. And they're registered nutritionists. So they couldn't find any resources. And this was actually the big reason they created their ebook that they created, and it's called The Predominantly Plant-Based Pregnancy. And so they decided to create the guide because they couldn't find the guide while they were pregnant. So they created a problem. They created a solution to the problem that they actually had themselves. And this is an email sharing the story of how they searched high and low for this guide, couldn't find it, and so they ended up creating it themselves. And they talked about how the issues with some of the current resources out there being that they weren't science-backed, they weren't actually good, solid resources in pregnancy, and as such an important topic, and it affects your health. And so you need resources that are actually science-backed and informative and helpful. And at this point, only after telling this very long, you'll see that this is a long email. That's another thing people ask me. They're like, oh, well, emails should be really short, right? Because no one wants to read a long email. And that's not actually true. Going back to the beginning of this email had a 27% click-through rate. The average click-through rate is 1%. So it's just not true that long emails are ineffective or long copy is ineffective. When you're human and when you tell stories in your copy, people are pulled in, they're interested because they can see themselves in your own story. When you share a story about your business, your reader can see themselves in the story if it's talking about pain points that they had too. So then finally here, after a whole lot of paragraphs, here's the first place where a call to action button is used to get instant access to the guide. Then the email goes on to talk about the value of the guide itself. So notice that we don't talk about the value of the guide until midway through this email. But we were talking about how the guide is a product of 6 months of research and has over 175 pages of content, and just reiterating the value. And that's a really important thing to do as well, especially if you're selling digital resources, because a lot of digital resources, to be honest, are crap. So it's important to talk about why a digital resource is valuable if you're selling one. And this is important for physical products as well. But then shared a few testimonials from happy parents, and then went into more bullet points about everything that was in the guide, and what readers will get out of getting this guide as well. And then this is finally getting to be the tail end of the email, where finally we mention price, and then we mention a money-back guarantee. And a money-back guarantee in your email copy is a really effective way to make your buyer feel confident in the purchase, but also make sure that you're delivering on the value to them. You want to make sure that they get value out of your product. And in this case, the founders wanted to make sure that they did offer the money back guarantee so that, they could make sure that their buyers were getting value out of this. And you may be thinking through all of this, well, this is a small business, and it's this email example is a small business. They're two co-founders. It's a food blog and a food and health and nutrition blog, and it only works for them. Telling a story like this only works for a small company like this, but that actually really isn't the case. You don't need to be a small business to tell your story or to tell a story that's going to resonate with your audience. One of my clients is Hopin. They are a virtual event platform where you can actually create a virtual event with different rooms in the event. And they're a massive company that is growing very, very rapidly right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, their services, their platform is in huge demand because of the pandemic. But the founder actually shared the story within this blog post. And I also wrote the onboarding series for Hopin, and we share this story in that onboarding series as well. But the reason he created Hopin in the first place was because he actually became allergic to the world. He really couldn't go out in public anymore, and he missed events. He missed in-person events like crazy. And so he created Hopin to simulate in-person events on the virtual level. And we shared this story throughout email marketing and throughout the blog. And it was a really effective story because it first off shows that the company is invested in the mission. They care about the mission. And they're not just creating this product to make money, but to actually change the world and make the world a better place. And again, it's a great example of how you can tell a really great personal story that connects with your audience, whether you're a big company or whether you're a small company. And these stories are going to grab your audience's attention because your audience will connect with them. So let's look at a couple more ways besides stories, besides personal stories and human stories, where you can add personality to your writing. Number one, this is a really simple one, but use you more often than use we or I. You can still use we or I, but you want to be talking to your reader more than you talk about yourself. I'll see a lot of companies who start their emails with something like, oh, we just launched this new thing and we're so proud of it and it's so great and we just love it. And literally, you would think that people wouldn't send emails like this, but they do. I have seen them do it, and I've had to edit emails like these. And you don't want that in your email copy. And so here's an email from Plant-Based Juniors where you can see how many times I use the word you and your, and I've underlined that. But you want to put things, you want to address your reader wherever you can. Additionally, be human, talk about the problems your audience has. And if you also have those same problems and you're trying to help your audience solve those problems as well as yourself, talk about the problems in that way. So in this email, the founders of Plant-Based Juniors are talking about while they were pregnant in their first trimester, they were really sick, and it was a really hard time for them. And so they actually created this morning sickness smoothie recipe to help with that. And this was sent to the series of people who identified that they wanted more information about pregnancy. So again, you can be human by telling stories, by showing off your own emotions, your own feelings on something. Another really good writing tool that you can use is called the Hemingway app. You can actually, this is a free writing tool. You can actually go and paste your content into the Hemingway app, and it's going to provide recommendations for you. I don't know if I need to share this for this audience because you're probably all experts at this. But I use the Hemingway app sometimes, and it can be a helpful tool to provide writing recommendations. And this is one of my favorite things to do. One of the ways to really build a connection with your audience, to be human and to have great email copy and emails in general is to be so valuable they can't ignore you. A lot of the reason that emails don't get opened is because people and companies are sending emails that aren't worth opening. So you want to have email content that when your emails reach the inbox, your subscribers say, oh, this company, this person sent this email. I need to open it because I know their emails are really, really valuable and they're really great. So be so valuable they can't ignore you. This is a great way to boost your open rates and to boost your click-through rates. So how, again, this goes back to doing your research. Identify your audience's biggest obstacles to purchasing, their fears and their questions, and then simply resolve those obstacles and fears and answer those questions in your welcome series, in your email automation. It's pretty simple, but a lot of people guess what their audience is dealing with and guess the questions they have instead of actually doing research to find out what questions their audience has and what pain points they have. So here's an example of how with Plant-Based Juniors, we solved subscriber pain points. One of the big pain points that we found through research with this audience, which the audience was predominantly moms who were raising, kids on the plant-based diet. But one of the big struggles that they had was the judgment they felt from other people when they told them that they were raising their kids on plant-based diets. And also other people would often tell them, well, you shouldn't be raising your kid on a plant-based diet. It's not healthy for them. And they had, desperately been trying to do research to find out like, oh, is a plant-based diet actually unhealthy for my kids, or is it healthy? So this email went through 5 of the biggest myths, or 3 of the biggest myths that people have around plant-based diets for children and how those myths aren't accurate. And then science to back up to back up all of this information. And this was really important for the audience because this was a major pain point they had, that friends and family were kind of judging them and questioning them for raising their kids on plant-based diets. And so this email gave them answers to those questions that well-intentioned people were asking them, and it solved a major subscriber pain point. Another example of content so good that people can't ignore it, email content that's so good people can't ignore it, was this course that we created with my client, Delish Knowledge. They're another food blog that does plant-based food. And we created this lead magnet that was called the Ultimate Plant-Based Protein Course and Cookbook. It had 40 recipes, 7 email lessons, and a bunch of other great resources, 7 cooking lessons. It had a free cookbook handout. At the end of the course, we surveyed people to ask what they thought. And then there were also promotion emails for their paid resources at the end of the automated email series. But the way the course worked was that people would sign up for the course here on the landing page. Again, this was entirely free. And then they would be added to an automated email series that gave them the course via drip automated emails. So it was a 7-day series, and it gave them these 7 different lessons. Here's a snippet from one of the lessons. And it's this whole entire email was talking about black beans, because black beans are a great source of plant-based protein. And this particular section was talking about how to add extra flavor to your black beans. Another example from this course was there was a whole entire email lesson on plant-based protein breakfasts. And in that, we talked about this recipe for oatmeal. Rebecca says, is this making anyone else hungry or just me? All these emails always make me hungry as well. So not just you. But we shared this 7-day course with all of these recipes. It was a ton of value. It was a ton of work to create this lead magnet and this automated course, a ton of work, but it had a big payoff because the subscribers loved it. And this is a great example of creating email content so good that people can't ignore it, and actually boosted overall open rates and click-through rates for this client for their other emails. Because when you create really great content, people know that they need to open your emails. And we surveyed people after they took this course, and I believe it was 90% of people gave the course a 10 out of 10. So it was a high value course. And putting time investment into your lead magnet is a really important thing to do, because your lead magnet is the first piece of content typically that your audience is seeing from you. So you want to make it a high value piece of content. And remember, this is the big takeaway from this whole entire presentation. Remember, you're a human. Your company is filled with humans, and your audience is human. So we need to act like it. And personality and humanity in our marketing, in our automation, is so important to acting like we should, which is acting like our audience are humans, and also to respecting them, and to being a good ethical marketer, and also just to having better content that actually connects with people. So that's the big takeaway from this lesson. I hope that's helpful, and we can take Q&A in a moment, but I want to give you all a free guide I have to open rates. This is actually my own lead magnet, to be totally transparent, but you can get the free guide. It talks more about email open rates, and you can grab it at bit.ly/LizWillits1. So bit.ly/LizWillits1, totally free. And no strings attached there. It's about a 15-page guide on getting higher email open rates. And you can always follow me on social media for more email plus copy tips. But happy to take questions from anyone. Hope you all aren't too hungry from all the images of food.
Thank you, Liz. We do have some questions, actually. I want to say, though, thank you for telling us about that replies automatically add you to the whitelist. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to build into our sequences some more attempts to get people to respond. So one of the polls that I did ask was, how many people do whitelist companies when they're asked to do it. I've never done it, and I thought it was going to be 100% no, but we've got a small data set here, but we had 63% of people said no, they never do, and 38% of people said yes, they always whitelist a company when they're asked to do so. So that was really interesting. Yeah. And then I asked, when you started at the start, you talked about some of the mechanisms we could use for gathering data. You had listed 5. And 36% of people here today are using market research. Almost 30% are using email, and 15% each are using subscriber interviews and surveys. So that was really interesting for what our audience is doing. And then two really good questions. So Rebecca has asked, how often do you recommend surveying the audience to keep the content or the strategy fresh?
Great question, Rebecca. That's an awesome question. So one thing I recommend is surveying someone in your automated welcome series, or having a survey in that automated welcome series. So that way, every new subscriber is getting that survey, and that's going to happen over time. So in the course of a year, you're going to have people constantly signing up to your welcome series and getting that survey. And so you'll have a constant slew of fresh ideas and fresh survey responses because every single subscriber is getting that survey. So I do recommend putting it in your automated series. And as far as how often you should send one-off surveys to get maybe a deeper look at what your audience wants and needs, I would recommend doing that with your subscribers at least once a year, if not twice a year. And if you're about to do like a new product launch or anything like that, like a new service, I would recommend definitely sending out a one-time survey to your audience before that to understand if the product or service is even going to actually help them and be of service to them, or if they're not interested in it. And also to understand better how they feel and how they think about that product or service.
Nice. I bet some sales teams would love to know the answer to those surveys as well, for a little bit of lead generation. And then Shauna asked us, she's sorry that she had to join late, and her question wasn't covered, which was, how many emails do you consider to be too many emails?
That's another very good question, Shauna. And I hear this a lot from people because everyone's, we're all concerned. We don't want to send too many emails to our audience because many of us have been on the receiving end of too many emails. So it really differs depending on the kind of content you're sending. And one of the things that I say to people, though, is if you're sending really valuable emails, send them as often as you're able to keep them valuable. So I know of not a lot of newsletters who send a daily email. So for instance, the Skim, Morning Brew, Finimize, they all send daily emails, and their emails are really, really value packed. And so they can get away with it. Now, if you have a content team who can't create content at that scale where they can send a daily email like that, then I'd recommend reducing your frequency and only sending as much as you can be truly valuable to your audience. When it comes to sale and promotion emails, like let's say you're launching a course or something like that, I've seen sometimes course creators will email twice a day. I think that's a bit much, but I think in the scale of like a 14-day launch period, sending a daily email is what you can get away with on the high end. So I think daily emails are okay. I think it differs depending on your audience. I would also recommend surveying your audience to find out how they feel about your email frequency. But that's on the top end. On the low end, you need to at least send one email a month. Otherwise, your email subscribers are likely to forget who you are.
Nice. So I had a question that I noticed. Now, I know that you may not have control over the design of all of the emails, but I noticed in a lot of the examples that you gave, there were not many images and mostly they were text. Mm-hmm. So what are your feelings about the ratio of text and images, or images at all, in these kind of onboarding emails?
I think images are great when you have good images to use. So for instance, again, I see a lot of email marketers adding in images for the sake of having images, and the images don't actually add any context or value to the email. So I would only recommend using images when they make sense and when they're actually going to add context to the email. But I tend to go lighter on images than other people, because often you don't need 3 or 4 images in an email. You maybe just need 1 or 2, and you should use those images and pick them very carefully, because again, they should add to your context. So in the case of Plant-Based Juniors food blog I worked with, and Delish Knowledge, another food blog I worked with, typically we'd be talking about maybe one recipe in an email, and so there's really no need to have more than one image in that email. So this is like a long roundabout answer, but basically I would say don't overdo it with images. I prefer to have copy because, again, copy is more mentally convincing often than images are, unless you're in a really highly visual industry.
Nice. I was also curious if the audience has any more questions. It's still okay to keep putting questions into the Q&A. But until then, I was curious, the 2 examples that you gave, two of the examples, the woman who wanted to create the pregnancy guide and the founder who created the software for virtual events. They both very much founded their companies on a personal pain.
Yeah.
And so I was curious if you have any advice for people who need to draw out stories where their company wasn't created off of a personal pain. I mean, maybe you can even give your own example here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny you asked that. I was listening to How I Built This, the podcast, the other day, and they were talking to How I Built This interviews founders of companies, really successful companies, to talk about their story of how they built the company. And they are talking to Wayfair, and the 2 founders of Wayfair. Wayfair is a furniture company, an online e-commerce furniture company. And the 2 founders of Wayfair admitted in the interview, they're like, we have no interest in furniture at all. Like, we just started selling it. We didn't have any story behind this. We weren't like furniture crafters. We were just like, hey, I think we can make money here. And that's how they started and why they founded Wayfair. And now the company is a huge, massive success. But even sharing a personal story like that is something that you can use to draw in and catch your audience's attention, because we're like hardwired for stories. So even sharing a story about how they didn't care about furniture, but now they do because they've seen that it's a good business, and there are other reasons that aren't like, not every story can be an emotional story about like, it has to be real. Like, you can't fake this stuff. So with the founding of Wayfair, them being really open and honest about, hey, like, we didn't care about this, but now, we're working with a lot of, we're running a successful company, and it's worked really well for us. And this is our story. And they're being honest about that. That can also work as well, because again, the stories draw people in, and also because their story is kind of funny. It's not the, problem story that I shared with Hoppin and with Plant-Based Juniors. It's not an emotional story, and it's not a problem-solving story, but it's a funny story. So my recommendation would be to use stories, make sure they're true, so don't be making stuff up, but use stories. They don't have to be a story about your founder and how like they were here to save the world and solve a problem, if that's not true. But you can use stories in other ways. Just like the Wayfair example, they still have a founding story. It's still engaging and interesting. It's just funny instead of being something that connects with us on a more serious note.
Yeah, and I think probably a lot more companies than would like to admit are in Wayfair's position. And so maybe we'll see more of that same story. Quite a lot of the people in this event are copywriters. and content producers. So do you have some suggestions for trying to draw stories out of customers, really trying to get them to share even things that they might not think would be an interesting part of the story?
When talking to customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like as far as tips to get those stories from your audience is simply to ask questions and listen and not try to draw out those stories. So for instance, I was talking about how I was interviewing a customer for one of my clients this week. And the customer freely started talking about the story of why this product was life-changing for them. And how it made such a big impact in their life. And the big question I asked was, well, how did you find this product and what made you choose it? So it wasn't like, this hard hitting question, like, please tell me all the emotions behind why you chose this product, but simply asking a question that's open-ended enough that the person can fill in the blanks. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's good. And one of the, I'm sure you hate to be asked questions about specific software, but I'm going to ask anyway. So maybe I could ask it instead to say, because I think with my own experience with automation is that one of the reasons they can become a bit robotic is that the providers give us lots of templates, and if we don't know a lot about email automation, we might think, well, that template's fine. I'll work with that template. That sequence must be about right if I'm delivering a white paper. So we've had a bit of it's been dictated to us by the providers. So my question, I suppose, is what kind of things would you suggest that people look for when they're choosing a provider, or what are any really red flags when we're looking at providers for email automation?
Yeah, so something to look into that a lot of people don't understand about email marketing providers is that different email marketing providers are actually better able to deliver your emails to the inbox than others. So one of the challenges that email marketing providers face is that they have all of these servers that they send the emails from. And all of their servers have a reputation over time. And that reputation can be bad or it can be good, depending on if spammers are using their platform. Because what Gmail and Yahoo do is when they notice a server that's sending a lot of spam email, they'll actually deliver less of that server's emails. So all that being said, different email marketing providers have different reputation servers and are actually either able to or less able to deliver your emails. So something to look into and to investigate with email marketing providers is, what is their deliverability rate like? What are they doing to prevent spammers from using their platform? How are they protecting their reputation? Do they have an in-house email deliverability team? So they have a team that is managing the sending of their emails themselves, or do they outsource their email deliverability to something like AWS or SendGrid? So that's something to keep in mind if you're interested in email deliverability. Another thing to keep in mind is who you are as a company and what you need. So some companies need tech support and they need really good tech support. And other companies don't need tech support because they have very technical people within their company. So that's another thing I would keep in mind, because when I deal with small businesses where there aren't many employees, often tech support is much more important to them because they need that assistance, they need that help, whereas larger companies might be able to get around without having that tech support. Yeah, two very practical answers to that. But I think email marketing providers, they're all different, and most of them, there are quite a few that I really like, and I like them for different reasons, and they fit different clients better. So it really just depends on who your business is.
Do you offer any kinds of resources about software, or about recommendations about where to start?
On software, I don't have any resources on it. If you're a small business, two that I like are ConvertKit and Aweber. MailChimp, it's personally not my favorite, just because I don't love the UI, but other people love it. So MailChimp's another good option. And then if you're getting to be a larger business, ActiveCampaign and HubSpot are good options. I like HubSpot because it's very usable and very user-friendly. but also offers a ton of functionality, including things like conditional content within your emails, where you send one email to your subscribers, but depending on what information you have about the subscriber, the content will actually be different. So it's a really smart way to segment or to send personalized content, but you're actually just sending one email.
Sorry for putting you on the spot about software. So we are out of questions, and I just thought is there anything else you would like to tell people, or anywhere else that they could go to find out more about you?
If they want to go to lizwillits.com, you can check out my website. My free guide on email open rates is also on that website. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining. You can email me at liz@lizwillits.com if you have questions. But I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the of Managing Editor Live.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Millie.